I still remember the day everything fell apart. The family cafe was busier than usual, and I was running between tables, my apron stained with coffee and my hair escaping its tight ponytail. The November chill had driven people inside seeking warmth and comfort food, making it our third consecutive day of nonstop customer flow. My shoulders ached from carrying trays, and the constant smile plastered on my face felt like it might crack at any moment. Mom and Dad were in the back office counting the day's earnings, while my younger sister Sophia was nowhere to be found. Again. The familiar knot of resentment tightened in my stomach. At 23, I had been working at Carter's Corner Cafe since I was 15, for little more than tips and the occasional thank you from my parents. Sophia, at 20, had never worked a full shift in her life. "Order up for table 12, Miguel, our cook, called from the kitchen window, sliding 2 plates of our signature apple cinnamon French toast across the counter. I grabbed the plates, ignoring the burn against my palms. "Thanks, Miguel." "You okay, Liv?" he asked, his kind eyes studying my face. "You look beat." "Just another day in paradise," I muttered, forcing another smile. Miguel was one of the few bright spots in this place. He really saw me, unlike my own family. He'd even offered to help me practice for my accounting finals last month when my parents insisted I cover Sophia's shifts during my study week. As I delivered the French toast to the elderly couple at table 12, the bell above the door chimed, admitting a gust of cold air and Mrs. Peterson, my old high school English teacher. She smiled warmly when she saw me. "Olivia, just the person I wanted to see." I tucked my order pad into my apron pocket. "Mrs. Peterson, it's great to see you. Let me find you a table." She waved away my professional demeanor. "I actually came to ask if you'd applied for that scholarship we discussed. The deadline is tomorrow." My heart sank. The Westridge Financial Excellence Scholarship, a full ride to one of the best finance programs in the country. Mrs. Peterson had brought me the application 3 weeks ago, insisting my talents were being wasted here. I haven't had time," I admitted, shame coloring my cheeks. "We've been so busy here and, Olivia." Her tone was gentle but firm. "We've talked about this. You have extraordinary potential. This scholarship was made for students like you." Before I could respond, Dad emerged from the back office, a ledger tucked under his arm. He spotted Mrs. Peterson and came over, all smiles and small-town charm. "Ellen, haven't seen you in here for a while. Coffee?" "Robert," she nodded coolly. My father had never been her favorite person, not since he'd dismissed her suggestion that I apply to prestigious universities back in high school. "I was just talking to Olivia about the Westridge scholarship." Dad's smile tightened. "Olivia knows where her future lies. This cafe has been in our family for 3 generations." Mrs. Peterson raised an eyebrow. "And it couldn't benefit from having someone with a finance degree at the helm?" "We're doing just fine," Dad said, his tone final. He turned to me. "Olivia, table 7 needs their order taken." I glanced at the clock, 7:30 p.m. I had been on my feet since 5 a.m. and my evening. Accounting class started in 30 minutes. The class I was paying for myself by selling hand-knitted scarves online and doing tax prep for neighbors during filing season. "Dad, I told you, I have class tonight. I need to leave by..." "Your sister was supposed to come in, but she called. Something about a study group for her business course." He shrugged, as if Sophia's excuse was perfectly reasonable. It was her 3rd cancellation that week, Mrs. Peterson was still standing there, watching this exchange with a pained expression. She knew what was happening. She'd seen it all through my high school years. "I'm studying too, Dad. I have finals. Olivia." Mom emerged from the back office, her tone sharp. The pearls around her neck gleamed under the cafe lights. A recent gift from Dad to celebrate Sophia's acceptance into the business program's exclusive mentorship track. "Your sister is working toward her business degree. You're taking what?" "Accounting." "Classes at community college? This cafe is your future. Sophia needs to focus on hers." The familiar sting of their dismissal burned in my chest. I had been taking night classes for 2 years, working toward my finance degree while carrying the cafe on my shoulders. But in their eyes, it would never measure up to Sophia's business program at State University. The same program they had refused to help me apply for 3 years earlier. "Olivia, table 7 needs their order taken," Dad shouted from behind the counter, not bothering to look up from the register. I glanced at the clock. 7:30 p.m. I had been on my feet since 5 a.m., and my evening class started in 30 minutes. "Dad, I told you I have class tonight. I need to leave by—" "Your sister was supposed to come in, but she called. Something about a study group for her business course." He shrugged, as if Sophia's excuse was perfectly reasonable. It was her 3rd cancellation that week. "I'm studying too, Dad. I have finals. Olivia." Mom emerged from the back office, her tone sharp. "Your sister is working toward her business degree. You're taking what? Accounting classes at community college? This cafe is your future. Sophia needs to focus on hers." The familiar sting of their dismissal burned in my chest. I had been taking night classes for 2 years, working toward my finance degree while carrying the cafe on my shoulders. But in their eyes, it would never measure up to Sophia's business program at State University, the same program they had refused to help me apply for 3 years earlier. I took a deep breath, ready to argue, when the bell above the door chimed. Sophia waltzed in, designer handbag swinging from her arm, not a hint of study materials in sight. Her caramel-highlighted hair was freshly styled, and her outfit, a cashmere sweater and designer jeans, probably cost more than I made in tips. In a month. "Hey, everyone!" She beamed, kissing Mom on the cheek. "My study group ended early, so I thought I'd stop by." She was dressed for a night out, not for hours hunched over textbooks. Mom's face softened instantly, the stern lines melting away like snow in spring. "That's so thoughtful, honey. Are you hungry? I'll make you something special." I fought the urge to laugh. I had been asking for a break to eat for 3 hours. Dad chuckled. "That's our girl, always thinking ahead. Business mind through and through." I stood frozen, order pad clutched in my hand, as Mrs. Peterson witnessed yet another example of the dynamic that had defined my entire life. Her eyes met mine, filled with a mixture of sadness and determination. "The scholarship application," she said quietly, pressing a folder into my hands. "It's already filled out. All it needs is your personal essay and signature. I've written a recommendation letter." She squeezed my arm. "Promise me you'll submit it." Before I could respond, Sophia spotted Mrs. Peterson and bounced over. "Mrs. P! Oh my God, it's been forever!" She threw her arms around my former teacher, who returned the hug with noticeably less enthusiasm. "Sophia, I understand you're at State now. Business program." Sophia nodded, somehow making those 2 words sound like she'd announced a Nobel Prize nomination. Top of my class. This, I knew for a fact, was a lie. She'd called home crying just last week about nearly failing her economics midterm. "How nice," Mrs. Peterson said diplomatically. "Olivia here has been exceeding all expectations in her finance program. Professor Winters says she's the most promising student he's seen in a decade." Mom's lips thinned. Dad studied the floor. Sophia's smile dimmed for a millisecond before returning full force. "That's our Olivia, always good with numbers. She's been balancing the cafe books since high school, haven't you, sis?" The way she said it made my accomplishments sound like a cute hobby, not a potential career path. The lies, the favoritism, it had always been there, but something about seeing it play out so blatantly in front of someone who actually believed in me broke something inside. "I quit," I said, the words falling from my lips before I could reconsider. The cafe fell silent. A customer at table 5 awkwardly looked down at his menu. Mrs. Peterson's eyes widened slightly, but a small smile played at the corners of her mouth. "What did you say?" Dad's voice had that dangerous edge I knew well. the tone that usually made me back down, apologize, accommodate. "I quit," I repeated, louder this time. My hands trembled, but my voice remained steady. "I'm done working here for free while you fund Sophia's education and make excuses for her. I'm done putting my own dreams on hold." Mom's face flushed with anger. "After everything we've done for you? This cafe was supposed to be your inheritance. We've been grooming you to take over." I laughed, a hollow, bitter sound that startled even me. "My inheritance? You mean my prison sentence? No thanks." I untied my apron and tossed it onto the counter. 8 years of unpaid labor, of missed opportunities and crushed dreams, all for a family that couldn't see my worth. "Olivia, you're making a scene," Mom hissed, glancing around at the customers who were pretending not to listen. Sophia rolled her eyes. "Drama queen much? Some of us are actually trying to make something of ourselves, not just complain all the time." That was the first time she called me a loser, though not in those exact words. It wouldn't be the last. "Making something of myself is exactly what I intend to do," I said, meeting her gaze directly. "Just not here. Not anymore." I turned to Mrs. Peterson, whose eyes shone with a fierce pride that made my throat tight. "I'll have that application to you by midnight." Dad stepped forward, his face darkening. "You walk out that door, don't expect to be welcomed back with open arms. Family businesses require loyalty." "Funny," I said, gathering my coat and bag from the hook by the door. "I always thought families required love." I walked out of Carter's Corner Cafe that night with nothing but my backpack, Mrs. Peterson's folder, and a determination that burned hotter than any pain. I made it to my class 10 minutes late, my hands still smelling of coffee, and sat in the back row, plotting my escape from the shadow of my perfect sister. The weeks that followed were a blur of activity and anxiety. Mrs. Peterson let me crash on her couch while I found more permanent accommodations. My student ID gave me access to the college's gym showers, and I picked up extra shifts at the library to supplement my meager savings. "It's just temporary," I told myself each night as I spread my textbooks across the rickety table in my studio apartment. The place was barely larger than my childhood bedroom, with a kitchenette consisting of a mini fridge, a hot plate, and a sink that dripped continuously. But it was mine, paid for with my own money, decorated with clearance bin finds and free prints I'd downloaded and framed in thrift store frames. The scholarship application consumed every spare moment. I wrote and rewrote my personal essay a dozen times, trying to capture my passion for finance without sounding desperate or bitter about my circumstances. Mrs. Peterson reviewed each draft, pushing me to dig deeper, to be more honest about my ambitions. "Stop worrying about how your parents will perceive this," she said one evening as we sat on her porch, drinking tea and editing my latest revision. "This essay isn't for them. It's for people who recognize potential when they see it." "But what if I don't get it?" I asked, voicing the fear that kept me awake at night. What if this was all for nothing? She set down her mug, fixing me with a stern look. "Olivia Carter, standing up for yourself is never for nothing. Even if you don't get this particular scholarship, you've already won the most important battle, the one against letting other people define your worth." The next few months were the hardest of my life. I found a small studio apartment across town, barely more than a closet with a hot plate, and took a job as a bank teller during the day. I still attended night classes, running on 4 hours of sleep and determination. My parents called exactly twice, once to tell me they had hired a replacement, as if I cared, and once to inform me that Sophia had made the dean's list, as if that was supposed to bring me crawling back. The bank job was a stroke of luck. During my interview, the manager raised an eyebrow when I mentioned my accounting coursework. "We've been looking for someone who understands numbers," she said. "Most of our tellers just want a paycheck." "I want that too," I admitted, straightening in my chair. "But I also want experience. I'm planning to transfer to a finance program next year." To my surprise, she smiled. "Ambitious. I like that." She extended her hand. "Welcome to First Regional, Olivia. The job paid better than I expected, and my manager, Sandra, became an unexpected ally. She assigned me extra projects to build my resume, invited me to sit in on client consultations when I showed interest in investment advising, and adjusted my schedule to accommodate my classes. My parents wanted me to take over the family construction business, she confided one afternoon as we closed up. I wanted to be a banker. It took 10 years before they finally accepted my choice. Some parents struggle to see their children as independent beings with their own dreams. I thought of the way my father's eyes had darkened when I walked out, the way my mother's lips had thinned into disapproval. Some never do. Sandra squeezed my shoulder. Their loss, Olivia. Remember that. 6 months after I walked out, I received a notification that changed everything. My finance professor had nominated me for a prestigious scholarship, full tuition, and a stipend for the remaining 2 years of my degree. The catch? I would need to transfer to Westridge University, 3 states away. I called Mrs. Peterson immediately, my hands shaking as I held the phone. "They want an interview," I breathed when she answered. "Next week, in person. I can't afford the plane ticket, but maybe if I pick up extra shifts and—" "Olivia," she interrupted gently. "I've already booked. Your flight? What? No, I can't accept that. It's too much. Consider it an investment," she said firmly. "One day, when you're a successful financier, you can pay it forward to another student who needs a champion." The interview was simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating. 5 faculty members and 2 alumni donors peppered me with questions about financial systems, market trends, and my personal journey. I spoke honestly about my community college experience, my work at the bank, and yes, even the family cafe. "It taught me the practical side of running a business," I said, careful to keep bitterness from my voice. "And it showed me that understanding financial systems is the backbone of any successful enterprise." 2 weeks later, I received the email. I had been selected. Full tuition, housing stipend, and a small allowance for books and supplies. I would start at Westridge University in the fall. I accepted without hesitation. Sandra threw me a going-away party at the bank, presenting me with a professional leather portfolio embossed with my initials. Mrs. Peterson gave me a fountain pen that had belonged to her father, a successful accountant. Miguel from the cafe snuck over with a care package of homemade cookies and a card signed by the regular customers who had missed me. The day I left town, I drove past the cafe one last time. Through the window, I could see Sophia behind the counter, laughing with a customer, while Mom looked on proudly. They had replaced me so easily, it was as if I had never existed at all. I pressed my foot to the accelerator and didn't look back. I changed my last name during the transfer process, a clean break, a fresh start. Olivia Carter became Olivia Reeves, my maternal grandmother's maiden name, the woman who had left me her collection of classic novels and a letter when I was 16. To my darling granddaughter, who sees the world through different eyes, may you find the courage to follow your own path. At the time, I hadn't understood. Now, as I crossed the state line with everything I owned packed into my second-hand Honda Civic, her words felt like a prophecy fulfilled. Westridge University was everything I had dreamed college could be. A sprawling campus with historic buildings and cutting-edge facilities. Professors who challenged and encouraged in equal measure. Peers who were passionate about their fields, who didn't view intelligence as something to be hidden or downplayed. For the first time in my life, I was judged solely on my merits, my analytical mind, my work ethic, my passion for financial systems. I flourished in ways I never could have under my parents' dismissive gaze. "Ms. Reeves," Professor Harlow said after class one day, "your analysis of risk assessment models was particularly insightful. Have you considered applying for the junior analyst position at Mercer Financial? They're looking for exactly your kind of talent." It wasn't just empty praise. He forwarded my resume personally, and suddenly I was interviewing for a part-time position that paid more than my full-time bank job back home. I made friends, real friends, not the polite acquaintances I'd maintained in my hometown, always careful not to outshine Sophia's social circle. Ayesha, my study partner in advanced portfolio management, who stayed up all night with me preparing for finals, plying me with her mother's homemade baklava. Devin, the economics major who challenged my every assumption but brought me soup when I caught the flu. Rachel, brilliant and ambitious, who saw my potential and pushed me to reach for opportunities I might otherwise have dismissed as beyond my grasp. "You have to apply for the Wilson Fellowship," she insisted one evening as we pored over notes in the library. "It's practically designed for you." "It's incredibly competitive," I hedged. "Only 2 students per year." "And?" Rachel raised a Nyazi eyebrow. "Olivia, when are you going to accept that you're exceptional? Your financial models are already being discussed by the faculty. Professor Ellison literally uses your case studies as examples." The old doubt, the voice that sounded suspiciously like my mother's, whispered that I wasn't good enough, that I'd be laughed out of the selection committee. But Rachel's unwavering belief, coupled with the evidence of my own success, gave me the courage to try. I won the fellowship. At the ceremony, standing before business leaders and academics, I gave a speech about finding one's financial independence. Understanding money isn't just about wealth, I told them. It's about freedom. The freedom to make choices based on what you want, not what you're forced to accept. I graduated summa cum laude with job offers from 3 investment firms. The ceremonies were held on a perfect May morning, the campus quad awash in sunshine. As I crossed the stage to receive my diploma, I searched the audience briefly, foolishly, for familiar faces. Mrs. Peterson was there, beaming proudly. Sandra had driven up for the weekend, but the seats I had reserved for my parents and Sophia remained empty. I chose Blackwell Partners, a boutique firm that specialized in real estate investment. The starting salary made me dizzy the first time. I saw the offer letter, but it was the mentorship program that sealed my decision. Each new analyst was paired with a senior partner for direct training and project collaboration. Jonathan Blackwell himself selected me for his mentee. "Your thesis on urban development investment strategies was fascinating," he said during our first meeting. "I'd like to see how those models work in practical application." Within 2 years, I was managing my own portfolio of clients. By 30, I had saved enough to start my own investment consulting business, focusing on helping small businesses grow their capital. I named it Reeves Investment Group, RIG for short. Rachel, who had pursued a law degree specializing in corporate structures, joined me as chief counsel and co-founder. "To RIG," she said the night we signed our partnership agreement, raising a glass of champagne in my tiny but stylish apartment. "May we build something extraordinary." "To freedom," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. Through strategic investments and calculated risks, skills I had honed during years of being underestimated, I built a real estate portfolio that would have made my business-minded sister's jaw drop. But they didn't know. After I left for Westridge, communication dwindled to birthday texts and obligatory holiday calls that grew shorter each year, until 7 years after I walked out of the cafe, when a wedding invitation arrived at my office. "Sophia Carter and James, Mitchell requests the honor of your presence." The cream envelope sat on my desk for days, its elegant calligraphy a stark contrast to the digital simplicity of my office. Rachel found me staring at it late one evening, a glass of bourbon in my hand. "An ex?" she asked, perching on the edge of my desk. I laughed. "My sister," her eyebrows shot up. In all our years of friendship and partnership, I had shared very little about my family. She knew I was estranged from them, but not the details, the perfect one. "The reason you work twice as hard as any human should?" I traced the embossed lettering with my fingertip. "She's getting married." "Are you going?" Rachel asked, her voice carefully neutral. I stared at the invitation, running my fingers over the embossed letters. James Mitchell. The name was vaguely familiar. A customer from the cafe, perhaps? Or maybe someone from Sophia's business program. Either way, my sister was getting married, and for some reason, she wanted me there. I don't know, I admitted. It feels like stepping back into a role I fought so hard to escape. Rachel nodded, understanding without judgment. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. But Liv, she hesitated. Sometimes going back on your own terms can be healing. You're not the same person who left. I almost threw the invitation away. Why subject myself to their judgment again? To the sidelong glances and backhanded compliments? But curiosity won out. After 7 years of building my life from scratch, I wanted them to see who I had become. Not out of spite, but as proof to myself that I had made the right choice. I RSVP'd yes and booked a flight back to my hometown. The week before the wedding, my assistant came into my office with a stack of reports and an odd expression. "What is it, Marcus?" I asked, looking up from my computer. "You asked me to research commercial real estate in your hometown," he said, placing the folder on my desk. "I found something interesting. The Westmont, it's the most prestigious address in the city. Recently changed ownership to a private investment group." He paused. I looked into it, and, well, the building's been undervalued for years. The previous owner didn't realize its potential. I flipped through the documents. My interest piqued. A historic building in the heart of downtown, recently renovated into luxury apartments with retail space below. The numbers were compelling. "Who's the current owner?" I asked. "That's the thing," Marcus said, a small smile playing at his lips. "It's available. The investment group is looking to flip it quickly. They specialize in renovations, not management." 2 days later, I signed the papers. The Westmont was mine, the crown jewel of my hometown, now part of my growing portfolio. It wasn't a calculated move to impress my family. It was simply good business. At least, that's what I told myself. The tower. Wedding was held at the Grand Meridian Hotel, the most expensive venue in the city. As I handed my keys to the valet and straightened my designer blazer, I couldn't help but wonder how they were affording such extravagance. Last I heard, Sophia was working as a manager at the cafe, which had expanded to a second location across town. Successful for a small-town business, yes, but hardly Grand Meridian successful. I smoothed the lapels of my tailored suit, midnight blue, subtle but striking, paired with minimalist diamond jewelry and a confidence I had earned through years of boardroom negotiations. My hair was shorter now, a sleek bob that Rachel insisted made me look formidably elegant. The woman who walked into that hotel ballroom was a far cry from the cafe girl in the stained apron. "Olivia?" a familiar voice called as I entered the reception area. Mrs. Peterson stood near the gift table, her hair now fully gray, but her smile just as warm. "I hoped you'd come." We embraced, and I felt a surge of gratitude for this woman who had believed in me when no one else did. "I almost didn't," I admitted. "I'm glad you found the courage," she said. "You deserve to be seen." The ceremony was elaborate, but impersonal, like Sophia herself, all about appearances. I sat in the back, observing rather than participating. My parents were seated in the front row, Mom dabbing at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, Dad beaming with pride. They hadn't noticed me arrive, and I made no effort to announce my presence. During the reception, I mingled with distant relatives and family friends, many of whom did a double-take upon recognizing me. "Olivia? My goodness, you look different," my mother's cousin remarked, her eyes taking in my obviously expensive attire. "Thank you," I replied with a measured smile. "Life has been good to me." "We heard you moved away," another family friend probed. "What are you doing these days?" "I run an investment firm," I said simply, not elaborating on its size or success. "Oh, like a financial advisor?" the woman asked, her tone suggesting she was picturing a cubicle in a local bank branch. I just smiled. "Something like that." "The Answer came during the father of the bride speech, after I had endured 2 hours of tense small talk and avoided my mother's pointed questions about my little business venture. The grand ballroom fell silent as my father took the microphone, champagne glass in hand. To my beautiful daughter Sophia and her wonderful new husband, James, Dad raised his champagne glass, his voice carrying across the ballroom. When James came to me last year asking to marry my daughter, I knew he was special. Not just because he loves Sophia as much as we do, but because he saw the potential in our family business. Thanks to James's family investment and Sophia's business, Acumen, Carter's Corner Cafe is now Carter's Cafe Collection, with 5 locations across the state and plans for expansion into the neighboring county. The room burst into applause. I clapped mechanically, pieces falling into place. James's family money had rescued and expanded the cafe. Sophia, with her business degree that my parents had sacrificed my education to fund, was now the face of their success. I watched as my sister embraced our father, her diamond engagement ring catching the light. 7 years ago, I had walked away with nothing. Now Sophia had everything she had ever wanted: family approval, business success, a wealthy husband, and the narrative of the perfect daughter fulfilled. But as I observed her throughout the evening, the way her smile tightened when James spent too long talking to a bridesmaid, the calculating look in her eyes as she networked with his family's business associates, the 3 shots of vodka she downed when she thought no one was watching, I wondered if she had found happiness along with success. After the speeches, Sophia found me at the bar, her wedding gown rustling as she approached. 7 years had changed her little. She still had that air of entitlement, though now it was wrapped in the confidence of someone who had always been told they were special. "I didn't think you'd actually come," she said, signaling the bartender for champagne. "Congratulations," I replied, ignoring her barb. 5 cafe locations, that's impressive. She preened at the compliment. 7 by next spring, actually. James's family has connections in commercial real estate. She glanced at me, a familiar competitive gleam in her eye. "And you? Still doing that investment thing?" "Something like that," I smiled, unwilling to give her the satisfaction of knowing just how successful that investment thing had become. "How noble," she said, with a practiced laugh. "We haven't seen you at Dad's birthday celebrations, or Mom's gallery openings. She's quite the artist now, you know." I hadn't known. The Christmas cards they sent to my office address, never my home, were always generic updates about Sophia's achievements, never their own lives. "I've been busy," I said simply. Sophia's lips curled into a smirk. "Too busy for family? Or just avoiding us because you're embarrassed about how things turned out?" Before I could respond, James appeared at her side, his arms sliding possessively around her waist. Up close, I recognized him. He had been a regular at the cafe during my last year there, always ordering the same thing: black coffee and blueberry scones, extra butter on the side. "You must be the mysterious sister," he said, extending his hand. "Sophia mentions you occasionally." "Does she?" I raised an eyebrow, shaking his hand briefly. An awkward silence fell between us. "You should come by the original cafe tomorrow," Sophia finally said, her voice overly bright. "Mom and Dad are hosting a post-wedding brunch for family. They'd never admit it, but they miss you." Her tone suggested she didn't share the sentiment. Against my better judgment, I agreed. That night in my hotel room, I sat by the window overlooking the city lights, phone in hand. I scrolled to Rachel's number, hesitated, then pressed call. "How was it?" she asked immediately. "Exactly as expected," I replied. "Sophia is still Sophia. Parents still think the sun rises and sets on her." "And how are you?" I considered the question, examining my feelings with the same analytical approach I used for investment risks. "Surprisingly okay. I thought I'd feel, I don't know, jealous? Bitter? But mostly I just feel disconnected, like I'm observing strangers." "That's healthy," Rachel said. It means you've moved on. Maybe. I agreed to go to a family brunch tomorrow. Brave, she commented. Whatever happens, remember you have a family here too. One you chose. Her words stayed with me as I drifted off to sleep, a reminder that family isn't defined by blood, alone. The brunch was exactly as uncomfortable as I expected. The original cafe had been renovated, its homey charm replaced with sleek modernism, all clean lines and minimalist decor bearing the new Carter's Cafe Collection logo, a far cry from the worn wooden tables and mismatched chairs of my youth. Mom fussed over Sophia's honeymoon plans while Dad monopolized James with talk of future cafe locations. I sat at the end of the table, an outsider in my own family, picking at my avocado toast and wondering why I had come. Bermuda has the most incredible beaches, Sophia was saying, her hands fluttering as she spoke. James surprised me with the honeymoon package, 2 weeks at the Royal Crest Resort. Mom clasped her hands in delight. Oh, how romantic! You always did deserve the very best, honey. I bit back a comment about who had deserved what over the years. This wasn't the time or place for old grievances. And the resort has a business center, Sophia continued, so I can still check in on the cafe expansions while we're away. Always the dedicated businesswoman, Dad beamed. I always knew you'd take the family legacy to new heights. I couldn't help but wonder if they'd rewritten history in their minds, if they truly believed now that Sophia had always been the heir apparent to the cafe empire, not the reluctant part-timer who showed up when it suited her. So, Olivia, James finally addressed me, perhaps out of politeness or pity. Sophia mentioned you work in investments? Before I could answer, Sophia laughed. Oh, she's always been fascinated by money, probably because we never paid her at the cafe. She said it like a joke, but the truth of it stung. I run my own investment firm, I said evenly. Primarily real estate these days, Dad snorted. Real estate? In this market? Mom patted his hand. Olivia always did have unconventional ideas, Sophia smirked. Well, not everyone can be cut out for running a successful business. Some people are better suited to supporting roles. The familiar dismissal, the same belittling tone I had escaped 7 years ago, it all came rushing back. But I wasn't that desperate, overworked cafe girl anymore. Actually, I said, setting down my coffee cup with deliberate care, real estate has been very good to me. I've managed to acquire several properties in the last few years. Oh? Mom's tone was dismissive. Like rental houses? That sounds like a lot of maintenance. The way she said it, as if property management was beneath them, despite the fact that they had spent decades maintaining a cafe, was so ironic I almost laughed. I smiled. More like apartment buildings, commercial spaces, the usual portfolio. Diversification, Sophia rolled her eyes. Sure, Olivia. We all know you left town with nothing but a backpack and an attitude problem. Speaking of properties, I continued, as if she hadn't spoken, I've recently acquired a building in the downtown area that I'm quite proud of. The Westmont on Park Avenue? The table fell silent. The Westmont was the most prestigious address in the city, a renovated historic building with luxury apartments and ground-floor retail space. It was also, as I had discovered 3 months earlier through a property search, where Sophia and James had leased their new penthouse apartment. That's where we live, James said slowly, looking between Sophia and me. I reached into my purse and withdrew a business card, sliding it across the table. Olivia Reeves, CEO, Reeves Investment Group, was printed in clean, sophisticated font across the top. I know, I said quietly. I'm your landlord. The silence that followed was deafening. Sophia's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips, her knuckles whitening around the handle. That can't be right, Dad said, his face flushing. The Westmont is owned by Reeves Investment Group, James finished, his expression unreadable. I remember seeing it on the lease agreement. Sophia's face cycled through shock, disbelief, and then settling on fury. "You're lying," she hissed. "You couldn't possibly afford—" I pulled out my phone, opened my portfolio app, and passed it to James. His eyes widened as he scrolled through the list of properties: 12 commercial buildings, 8 apartment complexes, and various other investments, including the Westmont. "I'm not lying," I said simply. "And I didn't share this to embarrass you. I just wanted you to know that while you were being handed opportunities, I was out creating my own. That little investment thing you've been mocking for years? It's now worth more than all 7 of your cafes combined." James whistled low, handing my phone back with newfound respect in his eyes. "Impressive portfolio, Olivia. You've clearly built something substantial." "This is ridiculous," Mom sputtered. "You expect us to believe that you, who couldn't even finish your degree at a real university—" "I graduated summa cum laude from Westridge University," I interrupted. "You'd know that if you had bothered to come to my graduation when I invited you." I hadn't, actually. The invitations had sat in my desk drawer, addressed but never mailed. I had known they wouldn't come, and couldn't bear the confirmation of my insignificance in their lives. Dad's face had turned an alarming shade of red. "So you come back after all these years just to show off? To rub your so-called success in our faces?" "No," I said, standing up. "I came back because despite everything, I thought maybe things had changed, that maybe you'd finally see me as someone worthy of your respect." I looked around the table at their stunned faces. Clearly, I was wrong. Sophia recovered first, her eyes narrowing. "You've always been jealous of me. This is just another sad attempt to prove you're not the family disappointment." "Sophia!" James looked horrified, but she wasn't done. "Face it, Olivia. Even with your fancy business card and your buildings, you're still a loser who walked out on her family because you couldn't handle not being the favorite." There it was, the word she had been implying for years, but had never said directly. Loser. The culmination of every dismissive look, every backhanded compliment, every comparison where I had been found wanting. The cafe around us had gone quiet, other diners pretending not to listen to our family drama unfolding. A young server, probably in college herself, hovered awkwardly nearby, unsure whether to refill our water glasses or retreat. Instead of pain, I felt an overwhelming sense of clarity. This family, these people, they would never see my worth because they had decided my value the moment Sophia was born. I had spent years trying to prove myself to people who had already made up their minds. "You know what, Sophia? You're right about one thing. I did walk out because I wasn't the favorite. But that decision led me to build a life surrounded by people who value me for who I am, not how I compare to someone else." I gathered my purse and stood. "I'm not a loser. I'm just not your people. And that's the best decision I ever made." Mom's face crumpled. For a moment, I thought I saw genuine regret in her eyes. "Olivia, please." But I was done with please. Done with hoping for scraps of approval from people who had never seen me clearly. "Goodbye, Mom, Dad." I nodded at them, then at my sister and her new husband. "Sophia, James, congratulations again on your wedding. The first month's rent increase notice goes out next week. It's just business, nothing personal." It was petty, I knew. Beneath me, really. But the flash of panic on Sophia's face made 23 years of playing second fiddle feel just a little less bitter. I walked out of the cafe for the second time in my life. But this time there was no bitterness, no desperate plans, just the quiet satisfaction of knowing I had finally broken free from the narrative they had written for me. As I drove away, my phone lit up with a text from James. I had no idea. For what it's worth, I think what you've built is incredible. I didn't respond. It wasn't worth anything, not really. His validation, like my family's criticism, had no power over me anymore. That night in my hotel room, I made a list of the people who had truly supported me over the years. Mrs. Peterson, who nominated me for the scholarship. Sandra, who mentored me at the bank. Professor Harlow, who saw my potential. Jonathan Blackwell, who took a chance on a fresh graduate. Rachel, who believed in my vision. My clients who trusted my judgment. My employees who brought my company to life. Family isn't always the one you're born into. Sometimes it's the one you build along the way. I flew back to Chicago the next morning, leaving behind the weight of expectations I'd never asked for and approval I'd never receive. The freedom was exhilarating. "How'd it go?" Rachel asked when I walked into the office. One look at my face and she smiled. "That good, huh?" "Let's just say I finally closed a very old position," I replied, setting my briefcase on my desk. "One, with diminishing returns." "Sounds like it was about time," she said, squeezing my shoulder. "Conference room in 20? The Peterson Group is here to discuss their portfolio restructuring." The Peterson Group, named after my old teacher, now the silent partner in a small but growing investment collective I had helped establish. Mrs. Peterson had used her retirement savings to invest in my first major acquisition, and I had made sure her faith in me paid dividends. "I'll be right there," I promised, turning to my computer to check emails. That's when I saw it, a notification from our property management system. James Mitchell had submitted a maintenance request for the Westmont, Unit 1502. Their shower was leaking. I stared at the screen for a moment, then forwarded it to our maintenance department with a note. "Priority service, please. New tenants." It wasn't forgiveness, exactly. But it was a choice to be better than the pettiness I'd been raised in, to conduct business with integrity, even when personal feelings might suggest otherwise. My phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Peterson. "Proud of you, Olivia. Always have been." With a smile, I grabbed my portfolio and headed to the conference room, leaving the ghosts of Carter's Corner Cafe behind. I've seen Sophia exactly twice in the 5 years since that brunch. Once at our father's hospital bed after his heart attack. He recovered and promptly returned to praising Sophia's newest cafe location. And once, unexpectedly, in the lobby of my office building in Chicago. "I didn't know you worked here," she said, clutching her designer handbag like a shield. The confident businesswoman from the wedding was gone, replaced by someone who looked tired, strained around the eyes. Her cashmere sweater was still expensive, but less perfectly coordinated with her slacks than I remembered. "I own the building," I replied, neither proud nor apologetic, just stating a fact. She nodded, a strange expression crossing her face. Not surprised this time. She'd had 5 years to adjust to the reality of my success. It was something else, something that looked almost like regret. "James and I divorced last year," she said after a moment, studying the marble floor. "The cafes are struggling. I came to talk to someone about investment options." For a brief, vindictive moment, I considered telling her that she was in the lobby of Reeves Investment Group's headquarters, that the company she was seeking help from was mine, that the older brother she had once called a loser now held the financial future of her precious cafes in her hands. But the satisfaction would have been hollow. I had outgrown the need to prove myself to her, to any of them. Success was its own vindication. 14th floor, I said instead. "Ask for Rachel. She's the best investment advisor I know." "Thank you," Sophia said. And for perhaps the first time in our lives, she looked at me without comparison or competition, just as one person acknowledging another. She hesitated, then added softly, "The Westmont. I moved out after the divorce. James kept the penthouse." I nodded, unsure what response she was looking for. An offer to lower his rent? Commiseration about failed marriages? We were strangers connected by blood and little else. "Mom asks about you sometimes," she continued. "She keeps that article about you framed in her studio." I blinked, genuinely surprised. "What article?" "The one in Financial Times, Rising Stars in Real Estate Investment or something. She points it out to everyone who visits." Sophia gave a small, humorless laugh. "I think she's trying to take credit for your success in some weird way. She got her head for business from me," she tells people. The irony was almost too perfect. After years of dismissing my interests and abilities, Mom had rewritten history again, this time casting herself as the source of my financial acumen. That's interesting, I managed, not knowing whether to laugh or sigh. It's bullshit, Sophia said bluntly. We both know you succeeded in spite of them, not because of them. She hesitated. In spite of me, too. I studied my sister's face, searching for the manipulation or hidden agenda that had colored our interactions since childhood. I found only exhaustion and what seemed like genuine remorse. Why are you telling me this, Sophia? She shrugged, a gesture so uncharacteristically vulnerable it caught me off guard. Divorce makes you reevaluate things. So does watching your business empire crumble. She met my eyes. I spent my whole life being the favorite, and look where it got me. A failed marriage, a struggling business, and a sister who rightfully wants nothing to do with me. I don't want nothing to do with you, I said carefully. I just don't want to be diminished by you. There's a difference. The elevator dinged behind us, disgorging a group of suited executives. Sophia stepped closer to me, lowering her voice. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I was cruel to you. Competitive and dismissive and, well, a bitch, frankly. She attempted a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Turns out being the golden child doesn't prepare you for actual failure. I nodded, recognizing something in her I hadn't expected. A shadow of my younger self, the version who had walked out of the cafe with nothing but determination and wounded pride. 14th floor, I repeated. Tell Rachel that Olivia sent you. I didn't tell her that Rachel was my business partner, or that I would inevitably hear about whatever financial troubles had brought Sophia to Chicago. Some boundaries are worth maintaining, even when old wounds begin to heal. Thank you, she said again, reaching out as if to touch my arm before thinking better of it. She stepped back, smoothing her sweater with nervous hands. I should go. Sophia? I called as she turned toward the elevators. Good luck with the cafes. She gave me a small, grateful nod and walked away. My phone buzzed as I stepped into the sunshine, Rachel confirming our dinner plans for that evening. I texted back a quick reply, smiling at her response. Family dinner at 7. Don't be late or the twins will steal your dessert again. As I hailed a cab, I thought about the strange twists life takes. 7 years ago, I had fled my hometown with nothing but determination and dreams. Now I had buildings, yes, but more importantly, I had people who loved me without conditions or comparisons. Rachel's twins, Leo and Lily, my godchildren, who called me Auntie Liv and showed me their art projects with absolute certainty of my interest. Marcus, my assistant turned VP of Acquisitions, whose wedding I had attended last spring. Jonathan Blackwell, now semi-retired, but still calling monthly to discuss market trends and proudly introduce me as the best investment I ever made. That evening, as I sat at Rachel's dining table, surrounded by her boisterous family and our close friends, I found myself thinking of Sophia. Rachel had texted earlier. Met your sister today. Interesting woman, complex financial situation. Aunt Liv, you're not listening, Lily protested, tugging at my sleeve. I said, do you think aliens have pet dogs too? I laughed, pulling her onto my lap. I think if they're lucky, they do. Dogs make any planet better. Later, after the twins were in bed and Rachel's husband had retreated to his home office to prepare for a case, Rachel and I sat on her balcony with glasses of wine. So, your sister, she said, ever direct. She's in trouble. The cafes expanded too quickly, took on too much debt. Classic case of growing faster than their management skills could handle. I nodded, watching the city lights shimmer below us. Can you help her? Professionally? Some restructuring, maybe selling off a few locations to focus on quality over quantity. She's got good instincts but terrible financial discipline. Rachel swirled her wine. Personally, that depends on what you want. I considered the question. What did I want from Sophia? From my family? Vindication? I'd already achieved that. Reconciliation? The word felt hollow after decades of dismissal. I want them to be okay, I realized. Not because they're my family, but because it's the right thing to want for any struggling person. Rachel smiled. And that, my friend, is why you're successful. You never lost your humanity on the climb up. After Rachel's dinner, I sent a brief email to our management company about the Westmont. Maintain current rental rates through next fiscal year. No increases. James wasn't Sophia, and I had no particular warmth for my former brother-in-law. But business decisions didn't need to be personal vendettas. That night, I dreamed of the cafe as it had been when I was a child, before Sophia became the favorite, before the weight of unspoken comparisons crushed my sense of belonging. In the dream, I was small, standing on a step stool beside my grandmother as she taught me to count the day's receipts. Money is just numbers, she had said, her arthritis-gnarled fingers guiding mine across the ledger. And numbers never lie. They don't care if you're pretty or popular or perfect. They just care that you respect them. I woke with her words echoing in my mind, the first lesson in finance I had ever received, long before professors and mentors and boardrooms. Perhaps my mother wasn't entirely wrong. I had gotten my head for business from family after all, just not the members she'd intended to credit. 3 weeks later, a package arrived at my office. Inside was a framed photograph I'd never seen before. My grandmother and me at the cafe. Counter, my small hands carefully arranging coins into piles as she looked on with unmistakable pride. A note was attached in Sophia's handwriting. Found this while clearing out storage at the original cafe. Thought you might want it. P.S. Thank you for sending Rachel. She's helping us salvage what we can. I placed the photograph on my desk, next to the awards and accolades I'd accumulated over the years. It wasn't forgiveness or redemption or even family reconciliation, but it was acknowledgement of where I had come from and who had truly seen my potential first. I never did tell Sophia that Rachel referred her to another firm, one better suited to rescue failing small businesses. Some connections, once broken, are best left that way. Not out of bitterness or revenge, but because sometimes the healthiest thing you can do for yourself is to release the people who cannot see your light and surround yourself with those who bask in it. The last I heard, Sophia had managed to salvage 2 of the original cafes. Mom still sends holiday cards addressed to Olivia Reeves, CEO, a title she now writes with a pride she never showed when I was just her daughter. I keep them in a drawer, unopened but not discarded. A reminder of where I came from, but not a map to where I'm going. Some might call my story one of revenge, of showing my family what they lost when they undervalued me. But I see it differently. It's a story of rescue, of saving myself from a narrative that was never mine to begin with, and writing a new one where I am not defined by who loves me least, but by who loves me best, and most importantly, by how I've learned to love myself.